I have been a thorough car guy all my life, but I also enjoy riding motorcycles a hell of a lot. Whenever there is a debate between cars and bikes and which one offers a more intimate experience, I tend to slant towards the motorcycles, and I am with the motorcycling community that much more because when you sit on a motorcycle and ride out into the unknown, you feel one with the elements. I'm not saying that cars do not offer you a great experience. I have driven cars on some really nice open roads and it is a beautiful experience. But the sense of intimacy that you get with motorcycles is just next level. It is that much more heightened on a motorcycle. And that is exactly what we are going to be talking about in this episode, because it is a special that talks about freedom, because we are celebrating the 75th year of independence of India. Now, freedom and motorcycles, they go hand in hand, right? And there are two motorcycles that define it in a very unique way from one another, but also very aptly. One is the Suzuki Hayabusa. It is just an absolute legend. And the other one is more a focused super sport motorcycle, and that is an Italian. So the colors of the flag are kind of similar to that of India's. It is the Ducati Panigale V2. Starting with the Busa, because it is the bike of the moment, and ever since it was launched in 1999, it hasn't really grown all that much. Not in terms of size, but just in terms of personality, because it has always been a very big bike in terms of the way you ride. It kind of wraps around you and you feel like you are in the bike rather than on it. And that has not changed at all. I remember the first generation bike, I rode it I think in 2003-04 or thereabouts, and I was absolutely blown away. It was a bike that I was not capable of handling at the time, and I don't think I have evolved at that level where I can actually say very confidently that I'm absolutely on point with the Hayabusa even today. It is a bike that is much more than what the rider has been all over these years. And it is absolutely heart-pleasing to know that the breadth of capabilities that the Hayabusa has remained constant, and it is still one of the most absolutely ferocious bikes in some ways, and also the friendliest in a lot of other ways. And I'm going to take you through all the spectrums as we go along. So this one, the third generation, technically the third generation Hayabusa that I'm sitting on, in 2021, this has not really changed all that much in terms of its platform. The chassis is largely similar. The subframe is exactly the same. What has kind of changed in terms of the architecture is the way the seat is planted. The rail has changed, and also the padding of the seat is much nicer. You feel like it's nice and cushy. But the biggest change that I felt in comparison to the original model, I have not ridden the second generation that came out a few years back, but compared to the original, the first one, the riding position seems very different. I think I'm more tucked in. It's a lot more organic. It's very natural, and it's almost like it has a mid-capacity super sport bike feel, which is actually extremely nice, because I kind of remember that the original Hayabusa, we sat a little wide apart with the hands, and this one is nice and you tuck in a little bit, which is extremely pleasing, and it also gives you a lot more confidence, because then when you tuck down, the screen is really going over and the efficiency against the air is really, really nice. As I said, the architecture of the Busa is largely similar to the older one. What has changed is the basket of electronics that it comes with now. The highlight is the 6-axis IMU, and we all have heard 6-axis IMU being used as a very passing phrase. But what that means is basically there is a computer that senses what is the dive or the pitch of a bike on both the front and the rear, then what is the roll, so when you're leaning to the right or the left, and also the yaw, so the rotation around the axis. It calculates all that, so that is what a 6-axis IMU is. And that talks to the central computer, and then there's a witchcraft of technological and electronic interference, or rather adjustments that you get as well. there is traction control, and you have 10 levels to choose from. 10 levels. I mean, you can be a complete novice and be very comfortable, and you can be a very expert rider and have a lot of fun with the Busa. And then there is also a 10 level anti-wheelie, and I'm not a guy who does wheelies very confidently. In fact, I don't do them at all. So, just imagine you have a very nice tucked in sort of riding position, and then you want to pop it up. But if you're dialed up, it is not really going to allow you to do that, and that is a very good active safety measure. I think in my book, it is not passive safety at all. And yeah, I think with all the power selector modes that you have and all the other trickery that is going on, it is a big change from what the previous generation of the Busa was. You get launch control with 3 levels to adjust your rev limit at, so you can be very confident and just dump the throttle if you are in the mood, and it's going to kind of manage you at the level that you set it at. And it also has rear wheel lift control, so if you're the kinds or if you're a person like me who does not like antics of that kind, then it is going to sort you out over there as well. Even if you go very hard on the anchors, it is not really going to allow the rear wheel to go up and make you nervous. So all very good. Now in terms of design, I think the front is very similar to the Gixxer family. If you remove the air dam and everything, it will look extremely similar to the Gixxer 1000, for example. And then when you go on the bars, as I said right at the starting, they are much more tucked in, and it's not really a stretched out position for you. It's something which is nice and snug, and you feel very natural on the bars. And even when you're riding, the riding position is such that your weight of the body is not resting on the wrists, and they're not really getting murdered. They're not really absorbing all the heft. So you can be very light on the wrist and just be very gentle on the throttle or the brakes, whatever. And yeah, I think the overall geometry, as I said again, is extremely good. It also has a 50-50 weight distribution, so the level of confidence that you get when you're pinning the throttle or even when you're kind of leaning into corners is very high. That confidence that you get with the bike sticking to the line that you take is just something else. And because it is also a heavy motorcycle, it just gives you that much more confidence. Now the engine. They have obviously not increased the engine size, so to meet the Euro 5 regulations, they have had to compromise on outright power and torque figures, which does not mean that the Hayabusa is slow by any measure. That will be absolutely ridiculous if you think that it has reduced a little bit in personality or character. That's not the case. But having said that, what they have done with the engine is altered the cam timing and improved the gas flow around the valves. The injection is also kind of modified, and it has narrower throttle body. So because of that, you have more air feeding into the system through the air dam that you have, and just more bang for the buck. The airbox is also slightly larger, and you have a ram air system. And because I think of the airbox going higher in size or the capacity or the volume, the tank volume has kind of gone down by 1 liter. So the tank capacity is now just 20 liters. It used to be 21, hardly going to make a difference. But all these changes that have been done to the bike to meet Euro 5 regulations have reduced the power levels, and it is now down by almost 8 bhp and 3 Newton meter. So the outright power is 137 bhp at 9700 RPM and 150 Newton meter at about 7000 RPM. And that's not too bad, because where it hits in the RPM range is not really all that different from what used to be in the older generation model as well. It also has ride-by-wire, so there is no mechanical linkage between the accelerator and the throttle. It's all done by electronic trickery, and that also kind of has a little different feel. Yes, it is probably not as intuitive and not as direct as a mechanical linkage, but you know what, you're hardly going to feel it. And I think it's all for the better, because it just enhances the ride quality. The responses are that much crisper, and yeah, I think the way the engine goes, it doesn't go, it just erupts. But the big question is, does it have that quintessential Hayabusa feel, and no denying the fact it still does. It still feels like it's a big falcon of a motorcycle, which Hayabusa essentially means. I have ridden the ZZR 1400 and that was an absolute beast. And I never really could get very confident with the Hayabusa. Again, as I said in the starting, I have ridden the first generation model and it had a little trouble with the braking system. It was not very efficient and I kind of did not gel very well with the bike. I was absolutely in love with the way it pulled and the way it just kind of made you feel when you rode it. But when it came to just reducing speed from some insane speeds, it was not really the best experience. And incidentally, it has the same calipers as the Ducati V4, so the elder sibling of the Ducati Panigale V2. But again, I would have really wanted the braking to be a little bit sharper. The progress from the levers could have been much more intuitive, and the overall bite efficiency as such could have also gone a little bit towards the north. Now, despite of the 50-50 weight distribution, the Busa still feels very front heavy. The steering is nice, but it kind of gives you that sense of heft, and which is actually not bad, because in a bike this big and heavy, you need that kind of a feel. You don't want an overly light steering because that will make you feel very, very nervous, very fidgety on the bike, especially when you just get on the throttle in a very angry way. In that case, the light steering would have really ruined your confidence. So it is nice, but when you're just from the word go, if you're very slow and just want to take a nice 90-degree or a complete 180, then in those cases, it becomes a little bit tough to manage. But you know what? The moment you get going, even at 10 kilometers an hour, it becomes extremely fluid. And that fluidity remains even when you are going around corners. Yes, it is not really going to be a very good track weapon. For that, you would want to lean towards the more focused versions like the V4 or even the V2 Panigale, but we'll come to that later. This is more a nice long distance cruiser with a good appetite for some track performance as well. So don't think that you can't go knee down. Yes, you can. But again, the pegs, they have a little extrusion over here. So when you're going or leaning down really heavily, they might just scrape before your knees will. So just be mindful of that. Now the suspension, and because the Busa is a nice long distance cruiser, it needs to be comfortable. You don't feel bumps all that much, and it rides beautifully over any kind of undulations or broken surfaces. We have been riding through some very patchy road situations and it has not gotten nervous at all. So I think the entire suspension setup, both the front and the rear, is very, very nicely done. It is about the very machine that grew out of motorcycling passion and the keenness to feel the wind, the freedom, the joy of life. The Hayabusa, the Falcon, a legend, a motorcycle conceptualized as a symbol of absolute freedom in the motorcycle universe. It is a machine that gave the engineers complete freedom to push their creativity and mechanical skills. It is a machine that gives the freedom to explore lands far and wide. It is still not as ferocious as, say, the ZZR 1400, but now you don't have the 14R, and that is what makes the Hayabusa really stand out, because you don't get the 1400 and you also don't have the H2S. So the Hayabusa is kind of in a space of its own, and that is exactly what really gives it that much more potential to do good in the market. And that is the reason why the prices have also gone up substantially. But to me, a guy who's been passionate about the Busa and not really its ideal customer, this was always a teleportation device. And I'm very, very glad that it still is a teleportation device. And now the Ducati Panigale V2, which essentially looks like the younger sibling of the absolutely crazy V4. And that's largely because the entire bodywork is very similar to the V4. And what to say about this one? It replaces the 959, which was not taken very kindly by a lot of people. And I remember the media ride that happened several years back at the Buriram circuit in Thailand. What a circuit, first of all. One of the most technical, one of the most flowing circuits that I've ridden on. And the 959 was not bad. It definitely had a little bit of rough edges here and there, but the way it flowed around that circuit was absolutely phenomenal. But then, when you ride something like the V2, you realize that, hey, you know what? The 959 was really not up to the level. The Super Quadro 995cc engine is essentially the same as the 959. It has gone up in power now by 5 bhp. So the power rating is about 155 bhp at 10,750 rpm, and the torque has also gone up. It's now 103 Newton meter at 9,000 rpm. So you get a sense that you really have to wring the neck of the engine to really come into that peak power and torque figures. And all that power gain is largely because of the more amount of air coming in from the air intake at the front, and it has different injectors as well. So combined, these two elements have really made a lot of changes to the way the throttle responds, and also that slight gain in the power and torque figures. And the overall body also is a lot more aerodynamic, and it has done away with those really ugly twin barrel exhausts, and you get a very nicely tugged single exhaust unit. So aesthetically, the V2 is just as pleasing, if not more, as the V4, and it is one of the most gorgeous motorcycles out there in the world right now. The chassis is not dramatically different to the 959, but the rear shock has 2mm more ride height, and you might be wondering that 2mm is really nothing at all, right? It's just this much. But it does make a lot of changes to the way the Panigale V2 feels, and it feels a lot more front bias as well, and it also shows it in numbers because it has a front to rear split of 52 to 48, and it also has the single-sided swing arm. That also might have something to do with the confidence that it gives you around corners, and it also lends the bike a little bit of flex, which is always a good thing because it makes the bike feel very intuitive to you. It is not something which is very rigid. It does have that slight bit of give, and that is really going to go a long way in telling you what the bike is doing and what the tires are behaving like, what the suspension is behaving like. So the ride height and the single-sided swing arm, they're both extremely nice. They talk to you very progressively as well. Again, compared to the 959, the V2 feels a lot quicker to turn in. It feels a lot more nosy and feels more natural in its personality. But the biggest changes have come in the way of electronics again. And like the Busa, the V2 also has a 6-axis IMU that it has taken from the bigger brother, the V4. So it has all the measurements that I explained on the Busa. So you have the pitch, the lean, and also the yaw measurements. And then it gets cornering brake control and also engine brake control. We have not really been able to push the bike on regular city roads to the extent that we could feel the cornering brake control coming in. But that's something that if you spend some time on the track, I'm sure you're going to have a big amount of feel of what the bike is doing around the bends, and also how the CBC or the cornering brake control really works. And it also feels like there is more room on the V2. Of course, it's not in the same league as the Busa because they're very different machines, and the nature of the two machines is very different also. This being a super sport, for that category, it feels like it gives you a lot more adjustability on the seat, and you can go right back and get the rear settled when you feel that it needs to be settled by your weight, and that is extremely good. So you can tuck right nicely and you can slide back. So the overall stability when you're really going for it is going to be top class. And that also helps when you go on and off the brakes. It does not feel very abrupt as it can in some other bikes. It squeezes down the fronts very nicely, very progressively, and the rear just feels as settled as always. So yes, in terms of the overall rideability and the confidence that it gives you on the seat, absolutely wonderful. The 959 always felt a little fidgety, a little edgy to me. It kind of got its hips moving when you did not want them to. So very unexpected behavior sometimes. But this one, it does not skid about, it does not hop, it does not slap you with anything which is unexpected. So in terms of just the stability and the confidence, the V2 is definitely several notches higher. But it is, again, why do we have the two bikes here is because they're largely in the same price bracket. And as I said, the application is very different, the categories are very different. So the V2 feels extremely sport bike oriented, or that whole nature of sport bike is very, very evident. It is really sharp at the front and you really sit on it rather than in it like you sit in the Busa. A breathtaking thoroughbred Italian experience of freedom on two wheels. This is a machine that expands the meaning of freedom and is not constrained by what would otherwise have been a mechanical prison. The V2 has a heart that expresses itself freely the harder you wring it. My benchmark in the mid-capacity segment was always the Triumph 675R. That was an absolutely glorious motorcycle and I've had some very good times riding that machine. In my view, very, very accurate, very sharp mid-capacity motorcycles have always felt kind of busy on the throttle, and it is all about that mad top-end performance. But the V2, it feels more mature than any of those typical mid-capacity motorcycles. It feels like a slightly smaller liter class motorcycle, and that's exactly what it really is, because now calling such a big engine a mid-capacity is just obnoxious. But that is what we are getting with the enhanced electronics that the bikes are coming with. So the engine can vary in its nature, and it can give you the middling sort of performance, which is very suited for the mid-capacity motorcycle. And then when you really have to unleash it on the track, dial everything up to 11 and it is going to be a very rewarding track experience. When it comes to the segment or the price that we are really talking about, they both retail around the same money, a couple of lakhs here and there. But one is an absolute legend that can also go on the track sometimes, and one is a track weapon that feels compromised on the road for sure. Which one would we pick? It is very, very difficult, because this is bought by people who want that whole sport bike feel, and this is bought by people who want to go long distance cruising, and they want something which has been a legend, a cult, and it is something which really is going to put a massive smile on your face all the time. Those were two motorcycles and two great riding experiences that are very unique from one another, but they're in the same, largely the same rather, price bracket. But they're binded by one common factor, that is freedom. That was our Independence Day special. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to connect with us, just go on any of these social media pages and drop in a line to us. Before going, as always, I urge you to be very responsible whenever you're on the road, be it on wheels or on feet. My name is Ashish. I'm signing off. I will see you in 7. Take care. Bye-bye.